All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend here. Thanks so much for joining in here on a Sunday night. And so like all the other live streams here, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll give priority answering to anyone who has a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone else who's a member there with the green usernames. They always get priority answering. So yeah, so hope you guys have had a good weekend here. We've had some storms, but thankfully I think they have all passed. You can even see I think a little bit of a sunset there through the window, and it's a beautiful night here. But anyway, so I see we have Mike, Brian, Linda, Ace, Kyle, Dave, Anthony, Cars, Steven, Michelle, B. Mitchell, Wheatman, Jazz. Hope you're all having a great time. Thanks for joining in here and stopping by. I also see a couple of you have the new member badges. So I finally this weekend was able to have a little bit of time there to update the member badge for those of you who've been a member for over 2 years, and huge thanks to those of you who've been supporting the channel for over 2 years. It's still crazy that it's actually been that long, and I really appreciate the support. Hopefully you enjoy the badge there. I know I think it was Zachary who suggested bronze for the coloring there. Feel free to weigh in on that. That can be tweaked, especially if it's just a color tweak. I can do that pretty quickly if you guys want a different color instead. But hope you're enjoying it. But I see the first member question here is from Mike. He says, well, Matt, so much for brands not being able to do last second moves like keeping the 6.4 Hemi alive. How did Stellantis do it? So I believe whenever we were talking about this previously, the question was about the Hellcat motor, which is already out of production. That's the big difference. 6.4 is not out of production yet. It wasn't going to be until December 31st of this year anyway. So that is a little bit easier as far as keeping it going because you already have existing stuff happening versus Hellcat. They've closed up shop and they are moving on to doing something else there. Now, I mean, nothing's impossible. You know, they could still bring that back as well. But I think 6.4 was a lot easier to bring back because, again, it's already in production. And, I guess they were able to secure the supply they needed and extend the contracts and all that kind of stuff to continue that. But I think that one still being in production was the big thing that made that happen. But that also still was a big curveball for me this week. I honestly, yeah, I mean, some people have speculated, it's the 4xe stuff. It's the fact that Charger EV is coming in and, the Ram Charger stuff, and they're confident that all those other vehicles will really help to boost their CAFE credits. And that could be what is, driving that, because I believe the situation is they can't buy any more credits at Stellantis. So that's why they really had to throw everything out, very abruptly. So I'm not sure, how that has played out. Also, I believe Wrangler is classified differently as like the larger, heavier duty kind of thing, not full blown like commercial, but I think, the truck and SUV loophole allows that to maybe stick around easier. And that also could open the door to Ram getting it back potentially for 1500s. But I still think it's unlikely for passenger cars. Again, never say never, who knows? But, we'll have to see. And also, they didn't just say like, hey, we're just like going to do Wrangler forever. They extended Final Edition another year. So maybe they were able to stretch, just a little bit longer, one more model year somehow, because it seems like the more intense CAFE stuff is happening in 2026 anyway. So if 2025 is still kind of like a more relaxed year, maybe they're like, all right, well, this is a big profit margin thing for us. Again, we already have production up and going, and there's clearly a lot of extra demand here. Let's turn out a few thousand more. Again, we're talking about a few thousand here too. That's the big thing with the Wrangler, this Final Edition. I mean, they haven't numbered this one, but the last one, I think they did like 3,700 of. Again, that makes it a whole lot easier to extend production when you're talking about a few thousand engines versus another 50,000 if you were to just bring back, mass production V8s. So I think, those contextual things really put it into perspective, that yes, it's possible and they've done it, but I don't think it's going to last beyond 2025 still. And I think it's not going to be more than a few thousand units. I could be wrong. We will see what happens. And again, like I mentioned, without getting into politics, we'll see what happens in November and, just how far everything is taken as far as regulations, if that in fact happens. But, I think that's the reason why 6.4, was able to stick around there. So I still think Hellcat doesn't have a chance. But we'll see if you turn out to be right, Mike, and maybe they bring everything back. We'll see what happens. But Um, and let me see, everyone else saying good evening here. Kyle says, hello, everyone. Sorry I missed last week. Hope everyone had a good Father's Day weekend. We had a great one. Hope everyone else did as well. And all good, Kyle. Thanks for joining in. And let me see. Vishal says, how's it going, Matt? Weather has been pretty hot here in Raleigh, North Carolina, above 90-degree days every day and hasn't rained in over a week. Yeah, so we've had some rain. It's been like quick little showers, but yeah, it was over 90, I think, every day this week. I think today was the first day it was like 85 or 88 or something like that. But it's been, yeah, in the 90s every day. Surprisingly, it hasn't been that brutal here for us in our very privileged position of having air conditioning and everything we need and all that. But yeah, it wasn't, even when I went outside though, like it wasn't too bad. It wasn't quite as oppressive as I'm used to 90-degree heat usually being around here, but hopefully you guys have been staying cool and doing okay here this week for sure. And Wheatman says good evening as well. And Luke says, I'm in California for a wedding. Well, enjoy the wedding and thanks for stopping by to say hi. But he says, I've seen 4 VinFast, 3 Fiskars, and a good chunk of 2025 Camry hybrids. Nice. Yeah, it's funny how California is really the only place where VinFast, I believe, have been spotted. It's the only time I ever see them as well. I'm in California as well. The Fiskars, I feel very bad for anyone that's still driving on one of those. But yeah, and Camry hybrids, I've been seeing this popping up everywhere. They are churning them out really nicely. But hope you have a great time at the wedding. And thanks for stopping by, Luke. And Good Stick says, why do you think Teslas have been dropping in sales while other EVs have been increasing in sales? So I think there's a combination of things. I think that the Elon factor certainly has hurt the brand at this point. I think personally he's doing more harm than good for Tesla right now. I think that Tesla would be better off as a company if either Elon was focused 100% on Tesla again, or if he just cut ties and, went off and did his other stuff. Because I think that is the more polarizing he gets, and him being so intertwined with Tesla, that's going to be polarizing for the brand. And like anything else, this is why I don't weigh in and air all of my opinions about everything online either, because I know I'm going to piss off 50% of you if I open my mouth with all the opinions I would say. And it's just bad business to do that. I mean, some people can afford to do it, and Elon surely can as well. But if he's actually trying to, have his companies do well, doing the things that he is doing are the exact opposite of what any PR person would tell you should be doing when you're, running unofficial PR for that company. So I think that's a big factor. And because that's also, not only is it, hurting new sales, but then there's other people who maybe were excited about Tesla back when Elon was excited about EVs. I mean, he still is to a certain extent, but, back whenever he was on a different side of the political spectrum, people were excited. They wanted to support the company more then. And now, some people view Tesla as this, thing of you're supporting Elon, and that's not a good thing for some people. And so there's a lot of people trying to get out of their Teslas and things like that as well. And so I think all that hurts it. I appreciate the 100s there. So I'm thankful that me going on this little tangent isn't too annoying. But so that's a big part of it. I think, though, just from an objective car enthusiast standpoint, their stuff's stale. The Model 3 Highland is the biggest thing that they've done, in the past few years outside of Cybertruck. And Cybertruck, again, has its own stigma. And, it's just this like meme generator for, much of the internet. Some people think they're the coolest people ever in it. And then the rest of us are laughing at them while they're driving around in them, So, it's just another thing that, again, if you're trying to actually sell cars, do you go that polarizing? Yes, it's, we're seeing still that early tip of the iceberg of the early adopters that we're going to buy it no matter what. And, the people that want to be the first one out there with something to make a statement and, turn heads and stuff. But is it actually going to be a good selling truck in the long term, or is something like a Lightning going to be the better approach? That's a proven formula that, is a good actual truck as well, and not just, something to pose in. And so, but I think just the regular lineup, Tesla just needs a good, solid refresh, like a redo of everything. The average car cycle in America is, like 5 years or so. Model S is what, 12 years old now? I mean, a few little refreshes here and there, but it's just an old car. Anything that's old like that, unless you're talking about a Forerunner or a few of the other very small exceptions in the car industry, no one increases in sales as time goes on. And it's just that. So you have a bunch of stale product that you're not bothering to update. Even with like visual stuff, like, swapping in headlights and bumpers is not enough these days. Look at what Hyundai and Kia are doing. Every 2 years, we have like a brand new interior. We have a brand new look, like not just like, little tweaks, like entirely changed front end for some of these things. And they do that on the regular. And their sales are really hot right now. I think that's part of the reason why. And you need to do that as a car company. And I think, Tesla just thinks they're above everybody else and they can just do their own thing and people are just going to blindly buy. And there's a certain amount of that is true, but that only goes so far. And then you have to convince the regular people who say, I don't want something that looks the same as a 10-year-old thing of the same thing. I mean, again, they're still doing fine. Tesla Model Y was the best-selling vehicle in the world last year. So, I mean, these are, I guess, not huge problems for them so far. I mean, I know they're really taking a beating this year so far, but they still sell a lot of cars, and so I think they're gonna have to be knocked down a little bit more before they really start to look in the mirror. I think a little more, and make those, I guess, conforming changes. Also, even the most recent numbers I've seen have suggested that between 25 to 40% of car buyers say Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are like must have, like deal breaker, like I'm not buying the car if it doesn't have that. Tesla has refused to still put that in. So you're alienating, we'll be generous and say a quarter of the market that, are going and buying a competitor just because they don't want to bend to Apple and Android. Just things like that are hurting them as well. But I think it's just old product, Elon, and, excluding people that they don't have to exclude if they were just more flexible with that kind of stuff, and listening to what customers wanted and actually doing those things. So I think those are the biggest problems with Tesla, in my opinion, right now. And I know, again, Elon is a very polarizing political thing in and of itself. So I don't want to, share all my thoughts on Elon, but I think that he is part of the problem for the company right now. And I want to see Tesla do well. But I think that, satisfying all of Elon's crazy imaginative designs like the Cybertruck and stuff is just a waste of what is otherwise a brilliant company that could be churning out fantastic stuff if they were having the right leadership, in my opinion. So anyway, maybe an unpopular opinion, but I appreciate the little bit of support there as well with all the thumbs up and 100s and all that. But that's my opinion on it, for better or for worse. But Joel says, Matt, am I the only one who thinks the previous gen of Camry looks better than the new one? Saw them side by side at Walmart this week. I mean, styling's subjective, so I think that's, a totally fair opinion. I think with any new product, there's going to be people who don't like it and, like the older version that they're used to and have grown accustomed to. That's totally normal. I think Camry looks good personally, though. I don't have any complaints with it. I think the back end maybe was a little more exciting on the last gen than it is on this new one. So I could kind of see, especially there, it being, a little more watered down, I'd say, for the back end of the new one. But I still think it looks really nice. But yeah, it's all subjective. Luke says, I've also seen at least 10 Toyota Mirai hydrogen cars. Man, that's another thing that I feel bad for people that have those, because they keep closing these hydrogen stations. As Shell just closed all theirs a few months ago, and there's not a whole lot left. And even the ones that are out there sound like they're not very reliable filling stations. So just not a great situation for them as well. It's a bummer. Austin says, hey, Matt, did you see the video of that guy's Jerry Corolla that blew the motor and caught fire? Crazy stuff. I hadn't heard that. Yeah, I'd be curious. I'll have to look that up and see. Funny enough, though, I still love the Jerry Corolla. So I'm, of course, every once in a while going on Auto Trader and just seeing, if used pricing has continued to come down or not. Hasn't really. It's still holding in like mid to high 30s. But I saw one of them. I just like going through some of the Carvaxes on them every once in a while. And there was one that I'm like, oh, this one's like a couple grand cheaper. It was like, I think 35 instead of the 37 or so they usually are. And like, wonder why it's 35. Let's check the Carfax. And sure enough, like at 3,000 miles, it was like engine replaced. I'm like, all right, this car has had a rough life so far. That's why there's a discount there. So not the only one that's blown up. I mean, it's a rally proven motor though, and it's a Toyota as well. So I'm still inclined to believe that it would be, a robust, reliable thing. But it's a little 3-cylinder with a big turbo on it. I mean, it's a stressed motor, but I think hopefully, the internals are forged and, bulletproof enough that they're pretty reliable overall. But obviously with any car, you're going to have a few that blow up. That's just the way it goes. I remember when the EcoBoost came out and a bunch of them blew up, and I was really nervous about, mine as a result of that. And now they've proven over the past 10 years to be pretty reliable cars. So, you're going to have some of that, and the internet, of course, exaggerates that. No one that's happily driving around in their GR Corolla is running to the forums to say, hey, mine is running great. Like, everyone, they're out living their lives and they're not sitting on a forum waiting. The people that are upset that have blown motors, they're the ones sitting on the forums airing their grievances. So there's that kind of, thing you always have to keep in mind too. I think the way because you always hear this from like mechanics are always like, oh, I work at a Toyota dealer and everything is wrong and broken. And, you hear that a lot from mechanics, but it's like, someone who's a doctor or a nurse or something being in a hospital and being like, everyone's sick all the time. And it's like, no, like you're just seeing all the sick people all the time. Yeah, everyone else that's healthy, it's the millions of people that are out there, like they're fine. It's the same thing with cars, that you can sometimes have a skewed perspective. And I think the internet kind of plays that up a little bit as well. But Steven says, agreed, Elon is a cause in regards to Tesla. So I'm glad I'm not the only one that thinks it. Kyle says, a dealer about 22 miles away from me has a $9,995 adjusted markup on a Hyundai Ioniq 5N, while other dealers are selling at MSRP. I hope that one sits for months. That's garbage. Absolutely. Yeah, they also don't know how to read the room. Like if everyone else is, selling them for a sticker and you're the one that's trying to do a markup, good luck with that. Sounds like we have some not bright people working at that dealer. But I guess, they're hoping for a sucker to come along and pay it. But especially with EV6 GTs, I mean, there was like 10, 12 grand off. I haven't driven an Ioniq 5 yet. I'm sure it's better. It's faster. It's going to have, other things that put it over the top. But if you can realistically get an EV6 GT, especially like even a lightly used one, I don't even know what they're going for used, but I even knew they were so heavily discounted. You're probably talking at least a 20 grand premium, even for an Ioniq 5 and its sticker. I mean, you're still with a Kia having, I think it's almost 600 horsepower. And for a lot of people, that's going to be enough. You don't have to have track ready stuff. So, I mean, yeah, I'm excited though. I am going to finally be driving Ioniq 5N soon. I actually have to post a updated member schedule because they were going to send me Ioniq 5N, I believe, this week. They had to push it back a few weeks because it was needed elsewhere for someone else who's more important than me, I guess. But so they sent me an Elantra N instead. I have this week, and I'm excited to actually get a Elantra N again. It's a manual, and I'll be posting that here very soon as well. So stay tuned for that one. But I'll do an updated member schedule here of everything I'm going to be uploading here now that things have been adjusted a little bit. I have another surprise also coming tomorrow, that a car I've been wanting to review for a long time. Don't get too excited. It's nothing wild, but an oddball car that I've been wanting to drive forever that I finally got a chance to drive this past week. So that'll be the one coming tomorrow. So a little bit of a tweak to the schedule from what I was originally planning, but I think it's hopefully going to be worth it. Trent Car Guy, thanks for joining in. FR8 says, I'm really sold on getting away from trucks at 47 years old and considering a Bronco 4-door or possibly the new Toyota Land Cruiser. I'm afraid the Land Cruiser will feel too mob crawler. Thoughts? That's a good question. So, I mean, Bronco is definitely going to be the more, off-road focused one. The Bronco, is really going after Wrangler. Land Cruiser is its own separate thing. That's, there's no removable doors or roof, it's just less hardcore than Bronco. So if you want something more hardcore and more truck feeling, I guess you could say, I mean, they're still both body on frame, but I think Bronco is going to probably be the better bet if you are having that concern. Land Cruiser though, if you go for a loaded one, it's all the luxurious stuff and all that. But the base one is cloth seats and it feels old school. And I mean, it's got the lockers and it's got all the gear there. So, I mean, you could really say that anything. I mean, Wranglers could be mall crawlers as well. So, that I guess really just comes down to your subjective perception of those vehicles. If there's a driving component about that that specifically triggers like the mall crawler vibe to you, let me know and I can let you know if Land Cruiser had that specific trait. But yeah, to me, I would just test drive them both if you can. I know it's probably really hard to test drive a Land Cruiser right now because I'm sure Toyota dealers are, being done with those as well. But if you can get into one, see how it feels to you. But I mean, it's definitely like a rugged, big, trucky, kind of thing. And it feels big and it's tall and it's substantial. So it definitely it doesn't feel even feel like Sequoia to me. Like it's more rugged than that. It feels more trucky than that. I mean, it's a far cry from, a RAV4 or something like that. So I mean, like it's a legit like rugged, go anywhere kind of feel to it to me. But it just so happens to still also be comfortable and all that as well. But I think if you're going if you want the most extreme thing possible, Bronco between the two is definitely the way I would go for that. And Austin says, I can't imagine paying dealer markup for anything barring some crazy rare edition or an exotic. Yeah, it is crazy that it has persisted as long as it has. It's just the age-old thing of there's someone out there that wants to be the first and they got the money to burn. And dealers know there's some of those people out there and they'll try and go for them as much as they can. And Steven says, Bob Lutz was right about Tesla. Once the mainstream car makers get on board, Tesla has nothing special or different. It's just another EV. Yeah, and especially since the other companies are willing to offer CarPlay, are willing to, refresh stuff every couple of years and, reverse engineer Teslas and then improve them in various ways. This is one of the things I really liked about Blazer, was that they said, okay, Tesla Model Y doesn't have a closing roof, doesn't have cooled seats, doesn't have, I mean, I guess they didn't improve the CarPlay thing, but they got 2 out of 3. And those are really big things. People complain about, not having a closable roof on the Y. People complain about, no cooled seats and things like that. So, I mean, that's the thing. If you're not going to innovate, someone else is going to be more than happy to do it for you and, take those those sales away. So, yeah, it's just kind of strange. I guess Tesla just, again, they're riding high. They have this super high market cap and all that. They think, they're above the industry and they can do whatever they want, but they're going to learn. You got to play by the rules that everyone expects as far as consumers. Consumers want something that looks fresh. I mean, look how many people buy a new iPhone only on the years whenever it's a new look. The in-between years when it just gets a better camera, no one cares, I mean, generally speaking, and there are people that buy them obviously, but it's just that thing that people want to have, the new looking thing. And, that's just why, even if it is just headlights and taillights, you got to do it every couple of years. You can't wait, 8 years to, swap around headlights and stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Tesla adapts and evolves or dies, because you got to do one or the other. And Austin says, hey, Matt, Hoovy seems to think Lucid and VinFast are not long for this world. What's your opinion? I haven't heard his thoughts, but I mean, my thoughts on the two of them, I mean, I don't know enough about their financials to probably give an intelligent opinion. All I know is that the people that are bankrolling VinFast are enormously rich. Like we're talking like billions upon billions. So even if I think VinFast has enough money as long as the people that are bankrolling it continue to bankroll it. I think VinFast has enough money to figure themselves out to get to the place where they need to get to be mainstream, healthy, profitable, all that. It's just going to take a long time. I mean, this is same thing with Tesla. I mean, how long did it take Tesla to become profitable? I think it was just a few years ago they finally started turning a profit after almost a decade of losing money and burning through it fast. So that's the thing. I mean, even the legacy car companies are learning this right now with, Ford losing money on the EV stuff and everyone losing money on the EV stuff. But that's a temporary thing until, you ramp up to the Tesla point where then you do turn a profit. It's just a longer term thing. It just takes more than a couple of years to do. As far as Lucid, they also seem to be bankrolled by some pretty rich, people. So I think they're on a little shakier terms than everyone else. I think Lucid, though, we just heard talks about how Genesis is potentially going to be using their motors. Aston Martin has formally already, they're in an agreement to use Lucid motors in the Aston Martin electric that's coming in a few years. And so I think that kind of stuff's going to really help Lucid, because I think Lucid has very good motors, and that's the one thing that other companies are, I think, behind on a little bit. And so if you are the it one as far as the technology goes for that component, and you have people like Aston Martin coming to you and potentially Genesis and maybe others, I could see Lucid, even if they can't make it on their own, I could see them still becoming a supplier, or something like that, to still survive, even if they're not making their own cars, to make other people's cars. But I think, if they're willing to share their motors with Aston and others, then you're able to, potentially subsidize your own vehicles, even if they aren't selling a ton of them or whatever. That could still help to keep them afloat. So I'm not too worried about Lucid and VinFast. I also think Lucid is an attractive one to be bought by other companies, whether it's Apple or someone else who just wants a shortcut into EVs. I think, that could be another potential thing. But McLaren has talked about, partnering up for their SUV and using like hybrid tech or something. But, there could be some others where they just want to start using Lucid stuff for companies that just don't want to do the R&D themselves. And when you have the Sapphire with its crazy power, that's going to be attractive to companies that can't get there on their own, at least as fast as, Lucid already has. So I think there's potential for Lucid as well. Both companies still certainly have lots of hurdles, and it's a rough road ahead of them for sure. But I think that, in my opinion, again, if the same people don't pull out their money, and, as long as everything continues with the investments and all that, I think that both of them should be okay. But we'll see. It'll be interesting. I don't think they're going to go the way of Fisker, though. I think that's a very popular thing. Like, aha, look, all the dominoes are starting to fall, and you'll see all these startups just vanish. But I really don't think that's the case. Even like Canoe, which had the crazy like cab forward truck and stuff. They've started now doing the postal service vehicles randomly. Even though I thought someone else was going to make that hideous like platypus looking like thing for USPS, but instead it seems like now Canoe is building some USPS trucks. So I don't know if they got a contract there, but even they're seeming to survive one way or another. Again, we will see how long all that lasts, but I think hopefully they'll all be okay. I never want to see a car company do badly, so I hope they all can figure out their own little niche and survive. But let me see. So I appreciate the laughs there on the platypus thing. But Vishal says, I saw an Ioniq 5N this week in my area. Have you seen one in the wild yet? I have not. Yeah, that's cool. You got to see one though. Yeah, I have yet to see one in person still. Well, I take that back. I saw one at the LA Auto Show back in the fall, but I haven't seen one on the roads or anything. Austin says, I hate Tesla styling. The Model 3 refresh is the least offensive, but they're still unattractive cars in my opinion. Yeah, I'd never liked the styling of them. That was another one of the things with Model Y whenever we were shopping with the Mach-E. Both Beth and I just don't like the styling on Model Y. And honestly, I guess again, styling is subjective, but to me, I can't. It's so hard to believe that the Model Y was the best-selling vehicle in the world last year, because like that many people are like, I don't know. I still just don't like that front end on those. But again, clearly, millions of other people are totally fine with it. Mike says nobody in their right mind buys a Model S over a Lucid Air, regardless if you're concerned about Lucid existing 5 years from now. When you're spending that kind of money, you regularly expect big depreciation. Absolutely, 100% agree. And also, yeah, if you're in that kind of a position, you're not worried about. I guess I'm not going to say you're not worried about losing a bunch of money, but yeah, if you're getting a Lucid Air, chances are you're an early adopter who's not going to keep it for more than a few years anyway, so it's not a big deal. Yeah, you'll always just hop into something else, and like you said, they expect the depreciation anyway. And Steven says, a good example, Matt, Hyundai Group has just adopted the way the car industry once functioned, something new and fresh often. Teslas all look alike, yeah. And you're right about that's the way the car industry, yeah. If Tesla doesn't like it now, back in the 20th century here, it was every year there was a new look for most of this stuff. That slowed down as we got into the 70s and 80s and 90s, but especially talking 50s and 60s, every single year a wildly different look for the most part. There's a few exceptions, but like every year was a completely new design. That was obviously at the point where they were selling millions of cars a year and there was no competition outside of the big three, but it's it was a whole lot more dog eat dog even back then. as far as styling goes. But Kyle says I still need physical buttons for certain things. Yeah, that's also another thing. Tesla trying to get rid of that stuff. It's not easy for everyone. It's also kind of funny because we were even just yesterday leaving our local pool, and there was a Model Y parked next to us, and the lady had just bought it, and she had a bunch of kids in the car that were talking and all that, but she didn't even realize that her hatch hadn't closed all the way. And the car was just dinging at her, but she had no clue that her hatch wasn't open in the back. I don't know if her Tesla just wasn't doing it, or if she just didn't see the message, or if Teslas actually don't alert you whenever your trunk is open. They just ding or something. I don't know. But regardless, we were like, your trunk's open. She's like, oh, thank you so much. And she was trying to figure it out. She's like, I just got this car. I have no clue how to work anything. So to your point, physical buttons and just all these new things. It's a learning curve for people. And obviously it's not impossible to figure out, but for people trying to adopt this stuff for the first time, it's tough, And there's even someone else I was talking to today that said, their older parents are looking to buy a new SUV. I'm like, what do they have now? And it's like an old Mercedes ML. And I'm like, well, the biggest thing for them is going to be the learning curve. If they're actually buying a new car, every single thing out there is just all screens now. And that's going to be a huge learning curve for someone coming out of like an old ML or an old, Mercedes SUV like that. Like it's going to be that's going to be the hardest thing. I'm like, regardless of whether they go for a different brand or stick with Mercedes, like that's going to be the hardest thing for them. So it's crazy how much the industry has changed and things have changed as far as, how everything's packaged and done these days. It's crazy. But MD Can says, howdy, Matt. Took both the Konas to a car show in Maryland. The Daily ended up bringing home a raffle bucket, and our club wiped the floor with best at club. That's awesome. Congrats. And hope it sounds like you had a fun time. So that's awesome. And cool you're able to bring both your cars out there. MD Can says, although we did have some bad happening with my brother's car after his Traverse was towing the Daily, his alternator went out on the way back to our club shop. We got it fixed though. That sucks. Traverses, I feel like they're not super reliable. I'm not sure why, but like, especially the older generations, it seemed like they were always having issues, or just I kept hearing about issues that people were having with them. But hopefully they figured out more reliable thing here with the more recent ones. But not doesn't seem like they're the best out there, unfortunately. And Cam Jam, thanks so much for rejoining. I really appreciate that. And I'll keep an eye out if you have any follow-up questions here. Let me see. So he also says it was scary as heck having 4 cops pull in after I was doing triple digits to try to get back to my bro to make sure he was all right. I thought I was going to get arrested. Man, 4 cops is no laughing matter ever. That is, some serious stuff when you got 4 of them, but glad everything worked out. And Gustick says, I have seen a Cybertruck while at Costco. The truck looks weird in a Costco parking lot. Yeah, I'm sure it's hard to maneuver in a Costco parking lot as well, even with the 4-wheel steer. But I've only seen a few so far, and it is always an interesting thing to see them. Austin says, hey, Matt, I enjoyed your G86 and Mustang EcoBoost comparison video. I've seen other reviewers complain about the 10-speed on the Mustang. Yeah, and, I remember like my first experience with that was in the 2018 Mustang GT. And back then, like it was all over the place with the shifting. And I remember complaining about that and complaining about the paddle shifting not being super quick. But it just something with the tuning. I don't know if it's for the S650s or what, where now it just really wants a hypermile bad. And it wasn't always like that. So I think that is what really made it even worse. And it's a shame. Yeah, I was not expecting to like really be annoyed by that car. I enjoyed my EcoBoost Mustang, 10 years ago or whatever, but this one was just, I'm like, man, like it was actively annoying me to drive it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to hop in the G86 instead and just drive that since I had them both at the same time. I was like, yep, I'm just going to go back to my comfort zone, just be in my happy little car with a manual that does exactly what I want it to do. I still just love the control of a manual. But, Mike says, Matt, did you see the TX Grand Highlander recall? If so, what are your thoughts and how the hell did they pass the crash safety standards? Well, I mean, with recalls, that doesn't mean that it's 100% happening. So I would assume that whenever they're doing crash testing, the ones that they were crash testing worked as intended. I'm sure that there are some Grand Highlanders and TXs that have had side airbags that have worked, just fine. I believe the IIHS, they tested them this year, I believe, or maybe late last year. I believe I remember it being normal and getting pretty good results. I believe it missed out on the top safety pick plus because I think the small overlap wasn't amazing. And so that was part of the reason why. So it was, and I actually mentioned that, I think, in my TX review, if I remember correctly. That it is a slight bit lower in the crash results compared to most of the other competitors. But I don't think that was because of the side curtain thing. But regardless, again, with recalls, anything like that, it's never happening 100% of the time. But it's enough of a risk that clearly you want to pull all the cars in and have them all fixed. Because you don't want to happen even once. So it's one of those things, better safe than sorry. But that doesn't mean that every Grand Highlander currently driving around doesn't have functioning side curtain airbags. So that's just the nature of recalls. It always sounds really bad, but then most of the time it's, there's a couple people, but again, that's the good thing with recalls when they're done well is, is being extra cautious, specifically because you want to be safe. Raphael says, sorry, I'm here. I was songwriting and lost track of time. Don't hold us back, or don't have us hold you back from writing a new song. That's awesome. That's so cool you're able to do that. And thanks for stopping by, Raphael. But by all means, if you are, I know what it's like to be in the zone and be not as far as songwriting, but just as far as editing or doing whatever. You're on a hot streak. You want to keep at it. Definitely don't stop by here just to for any reason. Definitely keep doing what you love. That's awesome. And thanks for stopping by though and saying hi. Let me see. Kyle, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate that, and happy to see some familiar faces. They're able to get some memberships again back into the club here, and maybe a couple of new faces as well. And thanks again, Kyle, for your generosity. And Sean, thank you so much for a super chat. First super chat of the night here. He says, yo, good news. I'm still employed. I'm taking a short trip to LA this week, thinking of renting either a 16 Miata or a 15 335i, both auto. What would you pick? I'm traveling alone with one bag. It's hot and sunny here. Well, first off, congrats on everything working out with the job situation there. And as far as the trip, so I guess my follow-up question would be, have you driven in LA before? If you are familiar with driving in LA, then I would say probably Miata. But if you are intimidated by LA traffic and, being on the I-5 and stuff like that with, I don't know how many lanes, but 7 lanes wide or whatever, being in a little Miata could be maybe a little scarier in that kind of an instance where I'd probably rather have the 335. But auto Miatas are fine. It really also comes down to what you like and what you prefer from a driving standpoint, whether you love a bunch of power or you want something you say it's hot and sunny. Also comes down to how much heat you're willing to put up with. Me, like, no matter how hot it is, I want to have the top down in a convertible. But if it's going to be unbearably hot and you'll just be miserable being in a tanning bed essentially with the Miata or something, then I could see the 335 being the better play there. It could go either way. Personally, I would probably go. Since you're saying what would I pick, I would probably pick the Miata myself. But totally can understand the 335i making more sense depending on how you feel on those variety of things. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. And I will see. He says you're very familiar with LA traffic. Okay, well then, so I would further say Miata then. He says I never get a chance to drive a convertible, and being by myself, I don't need 4 doors. Oh, then okay. So I'd say at this point, now knowing that extra stuff, I would say get the Miata. That would be the way to go, especially if I don't know if you've experienced the Miata before, but they're fun. So I think it's worth trying, especially if you haven't tried one out yet. So I see Slam Sedan says Red and LS swap Miata. Buckle up if you do. Those things are wild, that's for sure. And thank you again, Sean, for the super chat. Hopefully that helps you a little bit. And enjoy the trip to LA. That'll be great. And let me see. Getting back to the other member questions here. So Luke says, I'm considering selling my 2020 TLX and 07 Accord and getting an Integra A-Spec manual as my one car. Thoughts? So that's another one's going to come down to, I guess how, if you're not driving one of those vehicles, or if there's an advantage to having one over the other, as far as are you going to miss the Accord, do you like having the older daily driver kind of thing and having the newer thing? It comes down to how attached you are to both cars and what they do for you. But personally, if I was in your shoes, I mean, I love the TLX, but the 2020, I really like the newer ones, the newest gen myself even more. So, in my opinion, if it was me, I'd probably do that deal. I'd probably go for the Integra. I'd rather have the Integra over an 07 Accord and a 2020 TLX myself. Because the Integra is really nice and it does straddle that luxury thing. It's not as luxurious as the TLX probably, but you have the newest tech. It still has a great stereo, and having the manual is going to be a lot of fun, I'm sure, for you as well. And yeah, I'd say the Integra is going to be luxurious enough. Again, it still is a nicer Civic, so go into it with that. Don't expect it to be super plush or anything, but as long as you're okay with that premise, I think Integra is definitely going to be a nice upgrade. And yeah, I totally would do that myself. And Michelle says, I think Tesla can get away without CarPlay because their software is actually decent compared to other cars' infotainment screens. I mean, I haven't like synced my phone with one recently, but I think, now I'll talk about this again in my Blazer video whenever I have a follow-up on that I'll be posting here later this summer. But, the thing is just if you're an Apple user that uses Apple apps or any apps for that matter, because I don't believe you can download apps in a Tesla, it's just not having that app functionality. I know you have Spotify and a couple other things in Teslas, but like I can't do Siri texting with a Tesla. I can't do Apple Maps. I can't do or any other map apps. I don't think Waze is on there, right, or anything. I love Waze. I could not live without Waze on road trips. And just all the Apple things, Apple Music, maybe Apple Music's on there. I don't remember on Teslas, but as far as like my whole library of stuff, like it's streaming it through Bluetooth is fine, but it's a higher quality thing whenever you have your phone plugged in using CarPlay for that. As far as the source goes, there's just like those types of things. Apple Podcasts, being able to dictate a note. I do that every once in a while with Siri, a reminder, those types of things where like in a Tesla or in the Blazer EV, it's old school. You got to pull your phone out. You got to be distracted. You have to have a phone mount like you're driving some old car. Like it's still just not as good in my opinion. Again, other people are fine. They're flexible. They've lived with Teslas just fine. It's a first world problem for sure, but again, it's just a competitive disadvantage in my opinion. To not have that, even if you think it's a worse experience, like I've argued with GM for a while, even if it's subpar in GM's mind, it's not subpar to other people. So just offering the option for people just want options. And so I think that's just, one of the ways that they're just kind of missing the boat there a little bit. Let me see. Slam Sedan's responding to Cesare. Says Tesla is cheaper than most competitors. It seems like you really don't like Teslas. Could you explain why that is? And Slam Sedan rightly is saying part of it's Elon, but again, it's all a lot of subjective stuff. Like I said, no CarPlay, no buttons on the inside, styling I don't love either. Full self-driving is downright dangerous in my opinion in those. So the software is half-baked, doesn't have any radar sensors anymore, so less redundancies, less safety equipment. Those are I think the main reasons why. I mean, they are cheaper, you're right. But there's these price wars. I mean, Mach-E's are also getting pretty cheap these days too. I mean, Tesla does have a little bit of an undercutting thing, and that's part of what's keeping them afloat. But even as we've been talking about, they're still really hurting this year as far as sales with Tesla. And I think it's just because you can only discount so much, and that's also hurting goodwill with the brand from others who now say, "Great, now my Model 3 is worth 20 grand because of this price war." And I'm a casualty as well. Our Mach-E, I just looked at the value again. I swear, I checked like a month or two ago and the value was like 28 grand. And KBB just said the Mach-E is now, this, by the way, 11,000 miles on a 2022 Mach-E all-wheel drive is now worth, according to Kelley Blue Book, like between $21,000 and $23,000. This is a car that was $50,000 2 years ago. That is insane. And part of that is because of them trying to undercut. And it's also they built a little too many Mach-E's. They just wanted to finally have plentiful demand since everyone's complaining, oh, I can't find them anywhere. There's markups on everything. And like, okay, great. Let's churn out 100,000 of them. And then now that they're plentiful on lots, everyone's like, oh, no, look, they're not selling it. It's like, no, we just finally have regular inventory like everyone has been complaining about wanting. And now it's finally here. And that means they're going to have to go back to the discounts, which is what they're doing. But it just hammered Mach-E values. Thankfully, again, we did the Ford options plan, which is like a lease, but it was a purchase thing. So you're able to get the tax credit, but we're able to walk away from it after 4 years. So thankfully, I don't have to realize that gigantic depreciation loss. But that is like truly, like, even among luxury brands and exotics and all that stuff, like 50%, over 50% in 2 years is pretty much unheard of. So that is brutal. And I mean, thankfully, we're really happy with the vehicle. So there's no need for us to get out of it before the lease term that we have is done in 2026. But man, like if we were like not happy with that car, same thing goes for Tesla people. You're like married to it because it's like, well, crap, how do I get out of this? It's worthless. I don't want to completely get hammered on a trade-in and carry negative equity into something else or have to put up a bunch of cash to get out of this car. But I think that's probably going to hurt some repeat business with Tesla owners as well. So, I mean, it's going to hurt, Ford as well with Mach-E. People who aren't happy with that as well. But it's just, that doesn't really benefit anybody, honestly, aside from new buyers who are coming in and scooping up 20 grand Teslas and Mach-E's. But which, by the way, if you are on the fence and you want a good deal on a Mach-E or a Model Y, the time is now. I mean, maybe they will continue to plummet, but surely we have to be close to the floor for that because, I mean, there's no way that, like, I honestly can't believe that dealers are actually valuing Mach-E's that little because it's a really nice car with a lot of features. And I may actually do a video on this because, like, if you can actually get Mach-E's that are 2 years old with 11,000 miles for $21,000, if you can even remotely live with the electric car restrictions, and if you have a place where you can charge at home, like that is a no-brainer. 21 grand for a Mach-E that's basically brand new. Like that is a hell of a deal. So yeah, I'd say if you wanted an EV, this is the time to get a used one for sure, or even a new one with the huge discounts that are out there right now, because it's not going to last. I really don't think it's going to last. This is like we're in this like bell curve thing that I think is going to tick upward eventually. But let me see. So Slamson also says, have you seen any oddballs this week? Or what I thought I saw was a FD, turned out to be a C6. Bummer. FD would have been way cooler. Any oddballs this week? Nothing that jumps to my head. Yeah, I saw an oddball last week. I can't remember if I talked about it last week or not, but I don't even remember what that was. But I will think if there's anything else that I didn't remember, but I don't think I saw anything too out of the ordinary this week. And Zachary says, one of my clients was due to be the third person in my state with a first edition Land Cruiser since they ran the Land Cruiser Museum, but he was so unimpressed he gave up his order for NHL season tickets. Wow, that is impressive. I mean, I could see certainly if you're a Land Cruiser traditionalist, there's some of those people that are going to be upset about it. I mean, it is the Prado version. It's not the full-blown, full-size Land Cruiser anymore. I would argue just get an LX. I always argued get the Lexus over the Toyota when you're talking about $90,000 Land Cruisers, but that's crazy though. They actually gave up their order. I really like Land Cruiser. I mean, I'll be spending a week with one again in August to spend more time with it, but I thought it was really cool. It's just, the pricing is definitely the pickle that they're in because they have so many vehicles in such a tight little spot there that it makes it tough to stand out from the forerunners and stuff. But yeah, I thought Land Cruiser was super cool. I'm excited to spend more time in it. But we'll see how they sell. Maybe they'll be a complete flop and Toyota will have to pivot or something. We'll have to see. And let me see. Raphael, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, bought my Camry TRD May of 2020 for 32 grand. And Thursday, the dealer offered me 28. I really like the new one. Some of us still want the V6. Totally get it. And it's awesome. It's part of it's, I think, the power of Toyota, but also, yeah, especially I think, having the TRD, which currently isn't available, and having the V6, which isn't available anymore, are really, yeah, things that honestly your car may start to appreciate, or if nothing else, it'll freeze at 28 and won't go any lower for sure. I think it'll be kind of like a forerunner situation. Yeah, it's great that it's holding its value. It's definitely a good buy there on your part. Let me see other member questions here. Slam Sedan says, if someone is looking at a wide body Scat Pack and it's around 50 grand, but a used Hellcat wide body with the same miles is 59, is it worth the 9 grand jump for the extra performance? If you're already looking at 50 grand cars comfortably, stretching up to 59 for Hellcat, yeah, I think that's worth paying extra for, because Hellcat is just, the supercharger line is just so, that alone is almost probably worth the 9 grand increase plus the extra power. I would say though, from an acceleration standpoint, yes, Hellcat is definitely faster, but it just has problems hooking up. Even the wide body version, I laughed about this in my reviews. It still can't put power down, even with, what is it, running 315s all around or 325s. It's still, or maybe it's 305s, but regardless, it's over 300 section tires and it still can't put power down. It's hilarious. And if you love wheel spin, you'll get even more of it with a Hellcat there. But it's just a lot of fun. So yeah, I'd say, as long as you're not looking for a giant boost at the racetrack or something like that, I think if you're just looking for just extra fun, Hellcat wide body, yeah, it's probably worth the extra 9 grand. Just be prepared to be paying more for tires, a lot more for those wide body tires versus, I guess, when you're talking wide body Scat Packs, that's beside the point. But yeah, I'd say it's probably worth the 9 grand. Scat Packs are super fun though too, but the Hellcat is just, especially these days, it's going to be a rare, more sought after thing, I think, as well. So probably a better investment potentially if you keep it a while too and keep it in good shape. But yeah, so I'd go for the Hellcat. Luke says, my rental car is a 2024 Hyundai Kona 2.0 CVT all-wheel drive. Surprisingly, not too bad on power, but only about 25 mpg, and wireless Android Auto takes a while to start up. It's interesting that it takes a while. I believe at least CarPlay was pretty quick to connect in the Kona from my recollection from a few months ago. But actually, that was back over like Christmas time I had that. But yeah, Konas are great little cars. This new one is really nice, extra space, so it's actually more usable and all that. And I think they did a great job on the new Kona. I just saw one earlier today. They're starting to pop up pretty frequently around here. And Jules says, I think people choose Model S over Lucid Air because of the convenience of supercharging. Hope the new standards level the playing field. Yeah, and I mean, with the adapters and stuff, and Tesla opening that stuff up, that kind of gives away that advantage anymore. So I think hopefully that'll also help Lucid and help them to keep being profitable and all that. And Slam Sedan says, I saw on TikTok that Volvo had a backup camera prototype in the 80s, I believe. Yeah, I think I saw that as well. It's Volvo, they were really ahead of the curve in so many ways. I still just admire them so much, and I hope that even with the new ownership with Geely and stuff, they continue to be pioneers like they are. But like I said, I really commend them for delaying EX90 a year just because they wanted to get the LiDAR sensors on it really, really well done. Again, getting back to why I don't like Tesla, like they're removing sensors. They removed them a few years ago on the Teslas. They just use cameras. And Volvo's like, we're doing cameras. We're also doing radar. And we're also having LiDAR, active LiDAR built into the roof of this thing. Like, you can't tell me that, like, Tesla's as safe as Volvo when Volvo has this much extra stuff and this much extra redundancies. It just, that to me, like, gives me extra reassurance. It gives me more confidence in the company that they're not rushing stuff, that this stuff isn't half baked. That's how you reassure customers, is by delaying things and saying, we're going to get this right. We're going to take our time. Nothing usually good happens when you rush something. So, I love that Volvo is is being responsible with the way they're trying to roll out their extra driver assistance stuff. And MD Can says they were completely chill. I wasn't trying to do a GTA 6 type crap as far as the cops. That's good. I'm glad though, because I mean sometimes cops can be not chill even whenever people are. So glad everyone was good in that situation. But Cam James has officially been 11 months as a member and have never paid for my own membership. I figured it was my turn. Well, thanks, Cam Jam. I appreciate the support, and that's awesome that the generosity of others those enabled you to be a member for so long. That's awesome. And I guess the YouTube algorithm really likes you, because I feel like there's still people that get new memberships with the gifting, and for some reason it seems like it keeps coming back to you. So congrats, you seem to be very lucky in YouTube's eyes. And MDCan is responding to WNY here saying, Matt, I just bought a new Camry LE 25. What do you think? And his response was, or I think there's another question here about the 3.6 liter Traverse engine had a timing chain stretching problem, have to change the oil every 5,000 miles. Interesting. Okay, well, I guess that might be part of why they had issues maybe, but I see he said that's for the earlier models there. But congrats on the Camry, WNY. I love the new Camry. I just reviewed it, and I thought the LE was a great value as well. So, I mean, kudos to you for grabbing one of those. And yeah, if you have any extra questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But my review covers everything as far as all my basic thoughts on the car. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. But congrats on the new Camry. Hope you enjoy it. Hope it treats you well. And let me see. Brian, thank you so much for being a member for 12 months now. I really appreciate the support for a year. And I see you got the new badge there as well for the 12 plus months. And yeah, thanks so much, Brian, for being a member. And other member questions here. So where was I? Good Stick says, a couple of days ago, I drove in my friend's 2014 Corolla with a 4-speed. For a car from 2014, a 4-speed is laughably outdated. Yeah, and I think Subaru also had a 4-speed still in something, maybe, or maybe it's a 5-speed. I don't remember, but yeah, I mean, I guess it's a reliable transmission. The problem is they probably never had any issues with it, so that's good. But man, yeah, that is a standout. I don't think there's anything else that had a 4-speed in 2014 outside of that, and maybe one other thing. But Empty Can says, Matt, my buddy's Traverse has been surprisingly reliable. The alternator was his first big issue. The other issue we were chasing down is his amp, which is not that expensive of a repair. Crazy. Well, I'm glad it's doing well for him. That's good to hear. And he says he got over 120,000 miles on it. The engine and trans are still going strong. That's great. So maybe it's just that oldest, first generation that maybe was the bad ones. I don't know what year your friend's is, but I'm glad it's treating them well. It's awesome. And MD Kid also weighing in about the 335 there for Sean. Joel says, Matt, what's your take on people driving after dark with just DRLs on? Camisa said it's because the gauge cluster has lights regardless. Unlike old cars, see this problem all the time. Yeah, it is becoming more and more of a problem. I've noticed that as well. And I agree with Camisa that, yeah, gauge clusters are probably part of the problem. But I think also people are the problem. I mean, basically every car, especially a car that's new enough to have DRLs and screens or, illuminated clusters all the time, I'd say almost all of those have auto headlights. And so if a car has auto headlights and you're not using them, then you better be on the ball about that and be on top of putting your headlights on every time. And again, everyone forgets every once in a while. It's, I'm not trying to judge people for that, but it's just, if it's something you have trouble remembering, then you should probably just leave it on auto. I mean, usually the auto lights aren't super annoying in my experience. Sometimes they'll turn on at the wrong times, occasionally going under an overpass or something, but just leave them on auto. I usually just, always do that. And it's good enough. It's not like you're burning, gas or range or something, having headlights on all the time anyway, even if you had them on. But I don't know why people don't just leave them on auto. It's like you're making extra work for yourself by not doing that, especially people that aren't enthusiasts that like playing with their lights or something. But I think that's absolutely the problem for sure. And let me see. Other member questions here. So Luke says, I like the features of my Acura, but a little bit more fun with a manual, and the Sportback extra cargo space would be added benefits. Okay, yeah. In that case, if those are two things you're excited about, absolutely, Integra is going to be great for those two things. It's a great manual transmission. The cargo space is so well done in the Integra. I think it'd be a great upgrade. And Austin says, hey Matt, what European brands do you see coming back to the States in the next 5 years or so if electrification makes it easier to federalize vehicles? So I mean, the only one I've really heard about is, Alpine wants to come back or, make a debut here in the States. So I think they're, one that we know about. And, the emissions component is only, one component of the European hurdle. The other component is a lot of the other European countries. I mean, some of them, have the Euro NCAP standards, which make it, pretty high levels as far as safety goes. But you see, a lot of the Fiats and stuff, they sell them in Mexico because they're more lax there with safety stuff, but they can't sell them here because of the crash testing. So I'd say you still have the crash testing hurdle. You still also have the hurdle of just different vehicles for different needs. A lot of people still like smaller-ish cars in Europe. I mean, again, just being in Italy a couple of months ago, like I would not want to be in a big vehicle there because like a lot of the streets are still really narrow. And it would just be a giant pain to have a huge vehicle, even something that's like on the larger side, even if they didn't tax them like crazy, which they do. But even if they didn't, it just would be a pain. I'd be like, I don't want anything bigger than like a GTI or something over there anyway, So there's those types of things where, Europeans they're starting to build bigger and bigger vehicles. And obviously for American markets, like Volkswagen can make stuff like the Atlas, but they don't sell that basically anywhere else, I don't think, other than the United States. So like, there's those other hurdles that I think are going to keep the European brands mostly, in the markets they're currently in, unless they want to do more unique stuff like Volkswagen and others are willing to do. But some of these other companies I don't think are willing to, go up to that kind of stuff. And so, especially with companies, Stellantis, for example, like, does Fiat need to make a big splash here? Like, they're still under the same umbrella as the other brands within Stellantis. They're like, yeah, like we can just like let Jeep have that territory and that turf and let Dodge do the thing, whatever. Like, there's not as much need. Same thing, like, I'd love to see Renault come over or, Peugeot or anything like that. But it's like, they're all in these alliances where if they want to send a Renault over here, they can do that through Mitsubishi or something like that. So there's other ways that are probably easier than establishing a dealer network and setting up, operations and all that. It's just a very tough thing, as, VinFast and others are finding out, even with, trying to forego dealers, just servicing things, supporting these things, it's not easy. So I think there's those other things that kind of are limitations. And especially as we see electric vehicles, in Europe, again, you don't need to have 300 miles of range because Europe is, relatively speaking, a small place, especially when you're talking about individual countries. You don't need a ton of range because no one does 300 miles in any European country in a day, so unless you're a taxi driver or something, it's just like, there's less demand for that stuff. So it's like, why go to the trouble of engineering gigantic batteries for Americans whenever you can just keep selling your small batteries with 200 miles of range and everyone's totally happy in Europe because they don't need more, so there's those types of things too, I think, that hold it back. So as much as I'd love to see every European brand be present in America, I just don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. And Dave says, which concept do you like better, the Prelude or the MR2? MR2 for sure. That's way more exciting. I mean, Prelude is obviously much closer to production and, coming sooner, it seems. But that MR2 thing, it looks so cool. And hopefully, I think they kind of confirmed it for production. I don't remember. I know it's going to be a ways off, but I think they say like they basically they're wanting to make it. It's just a matter of, I think they want to wait for solid state batteries for that one. So that'll be probably a 2030 kind of deal or something. But hopefully they make it happen, unless, there's other rumors about a actual like cheap MR2 that'll be like under GR86 in price. That's going to be like a little 3-cylinder, slower kind of thing. And if we haven't seen that, I don't think, but if there's something like that, I could see even that could be more exciting than Prelude. If Prelude, it sounds like Prelude's going to be phoned in and just be a coupe Civic hybrid, which is fine. But again, if anything that gets phoned in, just usually is a tough thing for me to get excited about, especially when they have other things on the shelf that would be way more exciting. But I see also WNY says, I like how you don't hold back on Tesla. I appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully it doesn't upset too many people, but I'm always pretty blunt and honest, and I don't dodge questions usually unless it's a political one or something like that. But Tesla, even though it is kind of politicized these days, I think it's just, it's very important to me to just be very open and honest all the time, for better or for worse. And Austin says electric vehicles are seeing the most ridiculous appreciation I've ever seen in my lifetime. Donut just did a video about this. Interesting. I didn't see that. I don't follow Donut, but yeah, it is wild. And so we will see. I think that's going to be the really interesting thing to follow with the EV adoption thing, is like a lot of people said they were not interested because of the price. It's like, well, what about the price now? They're 20 grand like for nice cars too. We're not talking about penalty boxes for 20 grand. We're talking about nice vehicles. Even the Tesla, honestly, 20 grand for a Tesla is a fantastic deal as well. Even putting aside all of my gripes with it. If you want a good commuter that's going to save you a ton of money because you can fill it up super cheap at home with, plugging it in, like it's a hard, for just even a commuter, just beat on it, like don't give a crap about it thing. Like it's hard to argue against the Tesla or Mach-E or anything like that. Like it's like they're gonna, and so I think you're gonna start to see, especially since there's the used EV tax credit, I think it's $4,000 off, that even lowers those prices further. I think I'm not even like, a lot of people are focused on, oh, well, no one's buying new EVs, so the EV thing's not going to happen. It's like, that's also like beside the point, not an accurate statement. But aside from that, like this, I think the used thing is what's going to drive mass adoption, if everything stays the same, especially with the $4,000 credit. But honestly, we don't even need the incentive because, again, they're cheap enough as it is. And it's an incredible value. If you are buying it. But yeah, again, I feel bad for myself and others that are married to these vehicles until the lease is up or the, whatever happens as far as purchases goes. But yeah, if you haven't gotten one yet, this is definitely the time to get one if you're interested. And Slam Sedan says, I just looked up Mach-E here in my area, same miles and year, and they're 43 grand for a GT. Okay, well, GTs, yeah, definitely, but they start a lot more expensive. So we have the premium with the small battery, which probably hurts us extra because a lot of people don't want the small battery. But we were just like, we don't need the huge battery. We don't need to pay it. I think at that point it was like another $7 grand for the big battery. And I'm like, when do we drive more than 200 miles a day, especially with all the press cars that I have? There was just no reason for us to go for the big battery. So that probably is why our Mach-E is extra undesirable for the average buyer. But yes, I'm sure extended range is probably a little bit higher of a price. But still, we got like 227 miles of range or something. Still should be fine for most people. It's been totally fine for us, even with road trips. But regardless, Mike says, hey, Matt, what kind of hatchback do you prefer? Corolla hatch style, traditional, or current gen Civic style? I mean, styling wise, I love them both. I think that the Corolla hatch, if it was bigger, would be more usable, obviously, without the slant to them. I think, the boxy shape is obviously the more practical one. But I think, when we're talking about Corolla, they just didn't execute that hatch very well from a space standpoint. So as a result, Civic holds way more stuff, even with the more slanted, hatch roof. So, yeah, I think, if we're talking between those two vehicles in particular, I'd say I definitely would rather have the Civic over the Corolla. But I like hatchbacks of all forms. I'd say anyone that's supportive of a regular hatchback is okay in my book. I love them all. So I think it's a very underappreciated design that, again, Europeans love, and in America here, there's just no love for them. Unless you put cladding on them and raise them up 2 inches, then all of a sudden it's the coolest thing ever. But Trucking Car Guy says, I saw a Ford GT on my way to work Friday morning. Nice. I haven't seen a GT in years at this point, at least out in the streets. That's awesome. Cam Jam says, my 2015 Sequoia with 160,000 miles has similar ones selling for low to mid 20s. Crazy. That's the same as what the Mach-E is worth. Yeah. Again, it's just, I really like, even I could say it's just like, it's not desirable, but like, I have a hard time believing a Mach-E is that undesirable. you know, I mean, maybe it is, and that's fine. I'm not biased. Like, if people think it's a complete piece of crap, like, that's fine. But it's been a really good car for us, knock on wood. Beth loves it. I'm really happy with it. It's a good appliance. It's not a Mustang still, but it's a good appliance. And Slam, thank you so much for being a member for 13 months. I really appreciate it. He says, I'm taking a shot for every month I've been a member. Oh, man. Well, I will keep an eye out for your very poor typing here if you comment after that. But thanks so much for being a member for 13 months. I appreciate it. Let me see. So getting back to other member questions here. Where was I? Sean says, your Mach-E dropping in value is bad for you, but good news for people like me who want one but couldn't afford it before. Absolutely. And no, I mean, honestly, I'm genuinely happy because, like, for me, again, we have the lease term. We'll walk away from it in 2026 and we'll be fine, you know? So I'm happy. I'm happy they're depreciating. I mean, again, anyone who owns a Mach-E that's purchased it or Model Y or anything like that, like, I'm sure they would probably want to, you know, reach through this screen and strangle me. But I'm happy that they're depreciating because, again, this is, I think, what's going to really help drive this adoption and also just open people up to the idea of EVs, that maybe they're not so bad. Maybe it's actually really nice to not pump gas in the middle of winter and, you know, all these types of things that are advantages that people might not realize. I think a lot of people don't realize the niceties of an EV until you've have driven. And a lot of people, just one test drive is enough for them to be like, holy crap, like, no waiting for a transmission, no waiting for an engine to rev up, instant power. I love how fast and how enjoyable it is, but also just, like, I think, you know, living with them, having the 100% battery or 90% or whatever you want to do every day, and, you know, having a full tank every time you set off, you know, those types of things are nice that people probably don't appreciate until you're actually doing that, you know. And but anyway, I know it's not for everyone. I still don't recommend it for people. If you can't charge at home, don't get one. It's just going to be more of a pain than it's worth, probably. But if your lifestyle fits it, I think it's great, especially, again, at 20 grand. But I won't keep harping on that. But Mike says, hey, Matt, is it really less cost effective for OEMs to update old powertrains to make them emissions compliant versus making entirely new powertrains, i.e. 6.4 and Hellcat versus Hurricane, Toyota 3.5 versus 2.4T? That's a very valid question. So, and I was confused about this as well, because, like, you look at, for example, Hurricane motor versus Hemi, you look at the 2.4 Toyota versus the V6, great examples with both of those. They don't really get much better fuel economy. And in some instances, depending on how you drive and stuff and your, you know, where you drive and all that, it may actually get worse fuel economy, because if you're always getting on that turbo and stuff, yeah. And I see you said since the Hurricane, yeah, same page there with your follow-up comment. So the thing about, it's not just fuel economy, it's about the actual amount of emissions that get put out, which is the main driver, according to my understanding of it. Again, I'm no expert on this, but what I've kind of gathered and what I've been told is that it's not so much MPGs, it's the amount of emissions that it's actually putting out. So those two things aren't equal. Even if you're two vehicles that are getting the same MPG, one can still be emitting less than the other. And so that is the driver for the switch away from the V6s and the V8s. And so there's that component that, you know, when you're measuring those types of things and trying to, again, hit these regulations, I believe CAFE has a component of not just fuel economy numbers, but I think there's also, like, the actual emissions component that is measured as well. If I'm correct, I could be wrong on that. But so my understanding is that's why, like, yes, even if they don't get wildly better fuel economy, you know, it's also worth noting you're getting more power and more torque in those motors. So there's also a performance advantage for that downsizing as well, you know, which to some people is an advantage, even if, you know, people miss the V8s or the V6s or whatever. Like, for a lot of people, you know, the salesman says, oh, well, this one's faster, and then you take it for a test drive and you get instant torque from a turbo. A lot of people are going to be like, whoa, this is a lot quicker than my old V6 was or my old V8. And that's going to convince some people just to buy, as far as this is an upgrade over my old vehicle. But as far as the cost effectiveness of updating the old stuff, yeah, I don't know the, you know, the behind the scenes numbers on that stuff to make an intelligent comment about what that, you know, trade-off is. But I think the thing that I will just say, and this is a good thing to kind of, I find myself reminding myself of this and also just wanting to remind others of this a lot of times as well, is that the people that are making these decisions and the engineers, I mean, engineers are brilliant people. Kudos to anyone out there that is an engineer. I mean, they are really smart people that have, managed to get more power out of a smaller motor and have managed to make those motors more efficient. And I mean, look at just the leaps we've had in performance from the same kind of engines over, the past few decades, and just the massive improvements that have been had there. They're really smart people that have figured this out. And so if they, and even when I'm on these media launches, I kind of get the same vibe that like these are very smart people making these decisions. It might seem crazy to us on the outside. There might be, I might be like, why is Subaru not doing what I think they should be doing or whatever? Like there's those types of things, but I remind myself that there are very smart people behind the scenes that have a bunch of data and a bunch of numbers that we don't, that make these intelligent decisions and get paid a lot of money to do it. And are, people that these aren't just positions you walk into and, they hire someone off the street. I mean, obviously that doesn't mean that every high engineer and executive is some brilliant person. There's a lot of still, the boys club of hiring your buddy who you golfed with or your fraternity brother or whatever. There's that kind of crap that still goes on. But I think on the whole in the car company world, especially as far as engineering and stuff goes, they figured it out, that apparently it is more cost effective to have the downsized motors. It is more fuel efficient, or it serves their purposes better. Even if it doesn't make sense to us, on the surface, I have to trust that, these decisions aren't made lightly. They're not made by some idiot, they're made by smart people. So like, even if I don't understand it, I'm just willing to recognize I don't know the full picture. I don't understand it. I'm not smart enough to figure it out myself. I will leave that to the experts. And so that I guess is my best answer as far as that, since I don't have a good answer for you myself, but hopefully that helps you a little bit with a little bit of context there, I guess. And great question, Mike. And Slam Sedan says, wouldn't an all-wheel drive wide body Hellcat make sense and be able to disconnect the front axle to make it rear wheel drive to help with traction, but be able to make it rear wheel drive for some activities? Yeah, I mean, this is something that, other companies have done, BMW with the M5s and AMG with E63s and stuff, where you have, the rear wheel drive mode. Why Dodge didn't do it? My understanding is it's a packaging issue. They did the 5.7 with the all wheel drive for a few years, and they had it in cop cars right up until the end, I believe, or maybe they ended it a little bit early, but it was available longer in the police cruiser version. But with Hellcats, it just, I believe it was, I think you have to raise the motor up a little bit in the 5.7s, and there was no way to clear it with the Hellcats outside of, doing something crazy with the hood, which I'm sure Mopar fans would have no problem with. But from an OEM standpoint, they weren't able to, because I think I actually asked a Dodge engineer this back in the day, like, why not do it? It was just a clearance thing. It's just the bottom line. And so I think, you can do it and people have done it, but, I think that that's the reason, is it's just in from an OEM standpoint, a quality and a crash testing and whatever other standpoints, they weren't able to package it in the way that they wanted or needed to. And that's why they didn't do that. Because, that's the thing you have to keep in mind, is with rear wheel drive, you got a drive shaft, running straight off the transmission there, and it's nice and simple, versus if you have the all-wheel drive component, then you got to have something coming off the front there, and that usually you got to have extra clearances for that. This is also part of Subaru's justification for why we don't have a turbo BRZ or an all-wheel drive BRZ, is, if you're going to have stuff going to those front wheels, well, you got to have, unless you have electric motors in the front, you got to have something there as a bar that is going to be underneath the engine. And so, even with a turbo, that's another thing. Subaru's turbo engine, this turbo is mounted low, and again, you would have it too low to make clearance for what they needed for that engine. So they would have had to raise the whole engine. Then you got to, change everything else, change the driving position, and it's a whole thing. Again, others have done that swap who don't have the same OEM requirements that Subaru corporate has. But that's the reason why we don't have that as well, is it's just the packaging isn't right. I guess they didn't want to go to the bother of re-engineering the WRX motor with a different turbo placement to fit in a BRZ or something. But it's always just usually a clearance issue is the answer for those kinds of things, unfortunately. Austin says, speaking of Volvo, Hoovy also thinks Polestar will leave the U.S. market due to the import tariffs on Chinese-made EVs. So actually, that's something I talked a little bit more. So Alex Dykes of Alex on Autos, or now Auto Buyer's Guide, or whatever his channel is, he's a very smart individual who really keeps track of this stuff and understands a lot of that back end stuff a little bit more. And whenever the news came out about the tariffs, I was like, oh man, like, is this gonna, like, I think it was actually, we were on a program, and so I was able to ask him like a day after the announcements happened, like, is this gonna like mean that we don't get Polestar 3? Does this mean we don't get EX30? Yada yada yada. He's like, no, he's like, that stuff is all like still according to plan, like they'll be fine, because Polestar 3 was coming to South Carolina here, as S60 departs this month. So there's no issues there, because Polestar, I mean, I think Polestar 2 is currently in a pickle, but I thought that's also coming to South Carolina. I don't remember what, but Alex basically, the gist, I don't remember the details, but essentially he was like, Polestar will be fine. I'm inclined to believe him because, again, Alex is a really smart guy, and oftentimes just, I kind of defer to him when it comes to things that I don't know all the ins and outs on. But yeah, I mean, Polestar 3 will be fine. 4 is also planned. I mean, currently I think was going to be in China, but I believe there was also European production for Polestar 4 that was scheduled already. Same thing for EX30. We were never going to get the Chinese versions of EX30, supposedly. We were always going to get the ones that are built in Belgium or something. So he's like, that'll be fine. So I think Polestar should be okay as long as they sell in, continue to sell in decent numbers. But they also have the support of Geely. So, they're going to have a decent bankroll behind them. And as long as Geely continues to have faith in Polestar, I think Polestar will be, totally good. And also Geely has the advantage, since they're a Chinese-based company, of putting some of the really advanced Chinese tech, even if they don't build it in China, if they're able to get some of these very advanced batteries and stuff that, the Chinese companies already have, and put that in Polestar. I mean, Polestar could really have some advanced stuff. I mean, they just said, with the Polestar 4, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about in the weekly update, they did a recharge in, what was it, like 10 minutes or something, less than 10 minutes. I mean, they're getting some pretty impressive stuff, they're working on over there. So I have faith in Polestar as well. I also don't always see eye to eye with Hoovy, so I guess maybe I probably would be disagreeing with him because he's had some interesting viewpoints in the past. But I think Polestar should be okay as well. I could be completely wrong, though. Maybe he'll be right, and I'll be eating my words here soon. Who knows? Slam Sedan says, speaking of safety, did you see the Boeing hearing? How they half-ass safety and the CEO's salary has almost doubled while their planes are malfunctioning so often. Yes, I read an article about the hearings for that, and it's, the apologies, they was saying to literally the people in the courtroom who were like, families of victims. It just doesn't convince me, whenever he is saying the stuff he's saying. I mean, the guy's leaving at the end of the year anyway. He's already decided to resign. He's just weathering the storm, and he's going to sail off with his golden parachute and be fine. But it's crazy. I mean, this is a problem with just corporate America and just corporations in general. I'm not like anti-corporations or anything, but like just the greed and the half-assing and the cost cutting has just gotten so bad that it's like nothing's made well anymore. I was complaining about this with the appliances and stuff. It's just like, there's got to be some reckoning with these gigantic pay packages for CEOs, these gigantic, maybe some of you guys haven't seen, but I've been seeing, the numbers about the wealth gap and how, the middle class continues to be like this vanishing thing of, the rich are getting so much richer and the poor are getting poorer. And it's just like, CEOs, like, there's got to be some kind of like check and balance for like some of this stuff. I mean, I guess they're enabled by their shareholders and board members or whatever, but it's just like, it's one thing if the companies are doing great, but if you're literally killing people, like, I don't know. I wish there was more regulation and like even harder and stricter penalties for this kind of stuff than there is. White collar crime still seems like it's such a slap on the wrist kind of thing, and it really is so bad in so many ways. And Austin says there needs to be a criminal investigation. I totally agree, 100%. Boeing needs to be completely stripped to the studs and completely rebuilt with completely new people, and just it's crazy. And MDK's saying the Traverse has the 2018. Okay, so one of the newer ones. So hopefully the newer ones are better than the old ones. That's good to hear. Vishal says, I think auto headlights should just be a permanent thing. I hate how with Toyotas, if you turn the headlight switch to the off position, it just shuts off the DRLs. Yeah, I know that's strange. They can turn off DRLs. I mean, I guess there's safety reasons why you need to be able to do that, but it is interesting for sure. And I think auto headlights, there are times when I don't agree it should be a permanent thing. Because if you genuinely need to hide for safety reasons or something and you need to have your car on, I could see very, 1 in a million kind of scenarios where, I still think it's nice to have the option. But, honestly, I think as much as people hated GM for it, I think burying the headlight controls into a sub menu, again, there are times where it's annoying, for example, in the GMC Acadia, I was going through a construction zone where it says turn on your headlights. Well, my auto headlights aren't going to turn on my headlights when it's the middle of the day. And I got to go and dig into a menu. If I actually want to be a law abiding citizen, I got to go to the menu and turn it on. So there's some times where I still just want a button, but outside of construction zones, I really don't see any reason why. I think it's actually better to bury it in a screen. That way people leave it on auto. They don't play around with their headlights, and then you're set, and then everyone has their headlights on. So it's one of those things. GM has moments of brilliance that are then screwed up with poor execution or just other unforeseen things that I guess they didn't anticipate. Hey, driving through a construction zone. Why didn't someone at GM think about why, especially with all the traffic sign recognition there is now, you should think that they would recognize construction zones pretty well at this point and be able to be we're turning on your headlights automatically for that. And I'm sure they'll get there at some point, but for right now, it's they rolled it out too early. And it's just this half-baked idea that it's a good idea in theory, but in execution is just not the best. But Austin said my 500 Abarth doesn't have auto headlights and adjustment for sure. Nice. Yeah, that's surprising. I guess, it's a small car, so maybe it's just something they didn't want to bother putting in there. That's interesting. And let me see. So, Cam just says slams sedans chats are about to get wild. I agree. I'm excited for this. So far, we got a bunch of emojis and woo. So, excited to see how this develops. Austin says, I just want small sporty cars to make a comeback in the States, whether EV or ICE. I agree. That would be great. It just doesn't seem like the appetite's there from consumers here, unfortunately. I 100% agree. It'd be great. Small cars are so nice in so many ways, but especially, I can't blame people if you live in a place like Texas where every other vehicle is an F-150. Driving around in a Miata in Texas would probably be something I might not be 100% comfortable in as a safety obsessed person. So I can't blame the arms race that is happening with vehicle size, because if you feel intimidated by the Cybertrucks on the road and, being steamrolled by them, you want something that's bigger. I can totally appreciate that, as much as I don't like it. And I want everyone to be, having fun in little hatchbacks and little tiny Miatas. It's there's the self-preservation instinct that for some people kicks in. It's do I want to be staring at the underbody of this Hummer as I'm following behind it in my Miata? Probably not. But anyway, so B. Mitchell says, thanks, Kyle. I had to step away for a while due to a phone call. All good. And happy to see you're back in the member club there, B. Mitchell. And Slam Sedan says, anyone check on 2 Basement King? Yeah, 2 hasn't been here for a couple of weeks, I don't think now. Hopefully he's okay. And sometimes life just gets busy. Hopefully it's just something like that. But best wishes to 2. If he's watching these after the fact or something, hope you're doing well too. And I appreciate the shout out to him, Slam Sedan. Maybe I finally got him chained to the radiator well enough, or whatever his joke would have been. But Joel says, with your Mach-E, I think the depreciation is very bad because of the smaller battery. I shopped in April for Model 3. I was only considering the long range. Ended up getting one for 21 grand with 72,000 miles. Nice. It certainly is accelerated though, because like I said, ours was worth 28 back in April, and then it's really dropped the past few months here. But I think, the small battery, I agree, is definitely the thing. And he says, I drive less than 30 miles a day and supercharge it once a week. I live in an apartment. Nice. Well, I'm glad it works for you. I think it certainly is. If you have a predictable lifestyle and you know exactly, what your mileage is going to be most of the time, and and all that. Yeah, there was someone else I think who mentioned they charge once a week at their grocery store, and they live in an apartment and they're fine. And it's definitely doable. And I commend anyone who's, up for that. But, I just, from an ease of use standpoint, especially if you've never had it before and you're not super passionate about EVs, otherwise, just for the mass adoption, like, convenience factor, it's really only convenient, I think, if you can, charge at home. But Austin says, what fridge did you end up getting, Matt? I ended up getting a GE, is what we ended up getting. So, and sorry, Jeremy, I just missed your member comment there. But we got a GE, Austin, and so far it's doing well. But Jeremy, thank you so much for being a member for 26 months. I believe you are one of the earliest ones. I think there was just a handful of you that have stuck around for over 2 years now. I really appreciate it. But he says, I wonder who has the longer member streak than me. I think you are definitely one of the longest. He says, not really a question, but just replace my E92 M3 with a Mark V Supra. Hopefully it's reliable. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, the B58s seem like they're really solid, reliable motors. Hopefully the electronics and stuff, the BMW components are fine, but it seems like modern BMWs are really pretty good. So, especially also with Toyota, there's a little bit of Toyota stuff as well too. So hopefully they had a little more oversight and, maybe some input on some of the stuff with the Supra. I'm not sure, exactly how much Toyota did there, but congrats on the Mark V Supra. That's awesome. I hope you're enjoying it. And I'm itching to get into another Supra. There's no reason for me to review another one, but it's like one of those vehicles I'm selfishly like wanting to drive it again because I really love them so much. If I didn't need a back seat, if I was still like buying something around the price tag of the Bullet or something, Mark V Supra was always one of my top picks if I hadn't, if I wasn't owning the Bullet at that point in time, and I didn't need a backseat, Mark V Supra would have been my pick, especially when they came out with the manual. But hopefully you don't miss your E92 too much. Those are also amazing, obviously, but Supra's really, really nice. Congrats. Great upgrade. Truck and Car Guy says, don't get me started on my job slaving away in the heat while my managers sit in their office and their nice and air-conditioned offices. Yeah. It's one of those things. I really think, sorry for another little tangent, but I really think blue collar jobs, as you start to see less and less people wanting to do those jobs, I think that there could be a potential for those to really get a nice, I think a lot of blue collar jobs do pay very well, but I think you're going to see possibly more and more of those start to pay big money as you see less and less people wanting to do even just the dirty jobs, the plumbers, the, things like that. Like, there's less and less people, I think, wanting to do that stuff anymore. And that's going to make that stuff more expensive, which, is one of those things people are going to be upset about paying more for these services in the future. But if you have less people willing to do this stuff, it's at least for the workers, they're going to, really get paid well. And that'll be a good thing, for them. So I think that'll hopefully bring a little bit of better balance to things, even though it's not going to be, fixing everything. But I think that those types of things are great. I'm also, I'm excited about, all these new union contracts. Like even my UPS driver, whenever they had their new pay package that came out, was that late last year, I congratulated him. I'm like, dude, you work so hard. Like, he's such a nice guy too. We have the best UPS guy, but he was like, I told him I'm so happy for you. Like, you guys deserve to get paid six figures doing this stuff, in blizzards and in 90-degree days, driving with your doors open and crappy old trucks and stuff. Like, I think there needs to be more appreciation for those jobs that aren't the office ones. The office ones are important in many ways as well, but I think a lot of people take the blue collar and the manual labor stuff for granted in a lot of cases. And thank you, Truck and Car Guy, for sweating it out there and slaving away. B. Mitchell says, as for auto headlamps, Truck and Car Guy can vouch for the value of rocking your headlights to allow a truck to pass or merge into your lane. That's definitely definitely something a Truck and Car Guy can appreciate for sure. And let me see. He says, it's funny how much smaller my Lancer is compared to everything else, and ND is only slightly smaller than it. Yeah, it's so funny. Seeing, I talked about this last week. Seeing some of these older cars from the '90s on the road, just how tiny they are compared to new stuff, even small stuff these days by relative standards. But anyway, Chad, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, "My husband and I love watching you. Thanks for keeping it honest." Absolutely, and thanks so much for your support, Chad and Jordan. I really appreciate that, and thanks for stopping by and tuning in here. And let me see. So, and Chuck and Carg also says, can't confirm, but I also have had people using their high beams as well. I will admit I did that too when I was new to driving trucks. Vishal says, I really feel for people that bought Model Ys and peak pricing in 2022. I think performance models went for 70 grand or more. The appreciation is brutal for those folks. Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, it's gonna be a lot of people will be stuck in vehicles, and I think that'll be contributing to the average age of vehicles continuing to climb. It's already, I think, been increased from 12.3 years to 12.6 years. It's the current average of the new of a vehicle on the road in America. And I think if everyone's married to these EVs for a long time, that's not going to change for sure for a while. And Joel says Volvo's obsession with safety is so commendable. They are one of the few companies who will send engineers to accident scenes in Sweden to investigate and make their cars better. Yeah, it's I mean, you can always just see it with a crash test typically where IIHS comes out with a new test and they put an old Volvo through it and it passes fine because they engineer to their standards not to pass a test. And that's always, yeah, very impressive. That's one of the reasons why I really love Volvo, and that's one of the, I mean, and Beth also loves them too because she's Swedish, and so the Swedish flag thing is also an easy thing for her to like as well. But if we're in a position to replace the Mach-E with something that is similarly priced, the EX30, I wish it had a gauge cluster because if it did, it would probably, and I might even be able to live without it, but the EX30 is like one gauge cluster away from being like a top consideration for us potentially in 2026. We'll see, what else is out there by that point in time. There's going to be so many new EVs hitting in that year, it seems, but we really love Volvo. So I would like to, someday maybe own a Volvo would be nice. And Joel says, I heard this info from Alex Dykes. Yeah, and he loves Volvos as well. He's been a Volvo fan. He owned I think an S60R way back in the day. But yeah, it's impressive what Volvo does. And Austin says, I work a white collar job, but the work from home crowd annoys me. At least in my job, I know they're slacking by how long it takes them to respond to emails and instant messages. Yeah, although I do like the work from home thing personally. I mean, that's one of the perks of this job is being able to have that flexibility and the extra family time and stuff. But I can see how it potentially could hurt productivity too. But I can see both sides, because then you have the water cooler thing and then the offices as well. So I can appreciate both sides, I think. And as someone says, office workers slack plenty as well. yeah, I agree. And let me see. Kyle says, hey, Matt, in regards to your GR86 and Mustang review, which would you prefer, the GR86 or your EcoBoost Mustang you had? Interesting question. Between those two, I mean, the thing is, I'd probably say a lot of the same things that I said would still apply. Even if the transmission was better in the Mustang for the new EcoBoost, I still don't think it would have swayed my final verdict in that comparison of personally around here with what I like and stuff. I still think G86 is the way that I would go. Back in the day, the reason why EcoBoost Mustang was preferable to me over the current gen at the time, BRZ and 86, was it was just a lot slower for the G86, and the Mustang was just so much more punchy and still was around the same price tag. So to me, back then, the gap was bigger for the Mustang as far as its advantages. But the Toyota and the Subaru really closed that gap with the new gen getting so much punchier. And I mean, on paper, again, the numbers don't seem huge, but that extra torque, I mean, it is all my issues with GR86 or with that, that vehicle are just all solved as far as power goes because they're just so much fun now from a power standpoint. So I think when they closed that gap in EcoBoost Mustang, yes, it got quicker a little bit, but it wasn't a wild upgrade, for that one. So I think that's why that when that gap was closed and my power complaint was resolved, the G86, jumped ahead of the EcoBoost Mustang in my mind from a personal preference standpoint. So I would still say I would take G86 over old EcoBoost Mustang, even with a manual and whatever else you want to throw on it. But again, if you daily drive, you want something more comfortable, you do a lot of road trips, all the things I said in my comparison video, if those things are your life or your preferences, EcoBoost Mustang is still fantastic. I still love them. I'd still happily own one again in a heartbeat if I wanted something like that. I think EcoBoost Mustangs are great. I still worry about long-term reliability on those before 2024 because they didn't have the port injection, and so that means the motor gets gunked up and you got to clean the valves and stuff down the road. But outside of that complaint, I don't know if I keep an EcoBoost Mustang for more than 100,000 miles, but I think otherwise, yeah, I still think EcoBoost Mustang is a great car and I highly recommend it. And Vishal says, with my job, we are allowed to work from home once a week, but we got to be in the office because these companies got to preserve the real estate. That is exactly the answer. 100%. That is the reason why, yeah, they want to go back to offices is because they are. I just read another article this week about, these real estate tycoons and like the money that they are losing so badly. There's like these office buildings in like Texas. I think one of them used to be like a 30 million building and they just sold it for like 7 or 8 million or something. Like, that's gotta hurt. Talking about depreciation, you put up a giant skyscraper and then you lose 60% of the value from just out of the blue, something that you don't even expect with COVID and stuff. Like that's gotta hurt. So yeah, that's desperate. They're desperate to get people in these offices, especially since a lot of them can't be converted to apartments without a ton of extra investment and stuff. And so it's that is absolutely, they got to justify the real estate. Which also says, what do you think of the Aston Martin Vantage rival Lexus could be coming out with? The GT3 car, that is 100% happening because they need a homologation car because they are 100% going to race that car. It's already, it's been testing, I think, for over a year or two at this point. So that is definitely, that's been confirmed for a while now. But as far as, how I feel about it, we'll have to see. I mean, as far as what they do for the production version, if it has the race car V8 and all that, and it's really wild, I think it could be great. How it competes with the Vantage and stuff like that will come down to how well Lexus, does it and all that. I mean, it's going to be a GT3 car, so I have no doubts it's going to probably be even more hardcore than the Vantage, honestly. So I think the Lexus will truly be like a race car for the street kind of thing. So I wouldn't expect it to be super plush or anything. And they're talking about it kind of being like an LFA successor in some ways, which had like one cup holder and, wasn't the best as far as, daily livability or anything. So from a, like me, I'd probably still rather have a Vantage or something. Again, we'll have to see what they do with the Lexus, but I think it's going to be great. It'll be great to see. And I'm excited. I know there was some opposition, but I was happy to see that Akio Toyoda got reelected to be, the head chairman for Toyota still. And because also Koji Sato is a huge enthusiast as well. But, I think Akio Toyoda's leadership has been great. I mean, the amount of turnaround that Toyota's had since he took over and is now continuing to kind of, behind the scenes still have a lot of influence as chairman. It's really great. And so I'm fully confident that everything Toyota is coming out with in the next, 10 years is going to be awesome still. And I'm excited for it. And Trent Carguy says, even my coworkers in the back tend to slack off. Though with the heat, I don't get too mad. It's between 105 and 110 for the past week or so. Man, that is crazy. Hopefully I think you were saying you were having an air conditioning issue with one of your cars or something. Hopefully everything got worked out. And hopefully you've been able to stay cool, Trent Carguy. That's crazy. Austin says, hey, Matt, I can't believe they are releasing a Z Heritage Edition when they can't even meet demand for production of the regular car. Yeah, well, not even demand for, they're not selling them. So, yeah, as far as just they can't, there's also this like a production issue I've heard, but like you look on Auto Trader, there's like, I think over 400 new Zs listed. So like honestly, I think they're fine even with production. Honestly, just people aren't buying them. And yeah, the Heritage Edition again, it's just a ploy. I don't want to say ploy because that's like a nefarious kind of sounding word, but like it's just, another marketing thing to, get a few of the other blank checkers out there that, are nostalgic for old Z's and have the disposable cash. And, they're hoping that they're, going to open their wallets again for that vehicle. And maybe they will. Again, Nissan has the data. Hopefully they've done their research and they know how many they can sell and they don't overproduce them and they, do whatever they do. But Cam Jim says the only thing Slam Sedan passed out. We'll see if Slam Sedan checks in with us here or not. But maybe he actually was serious about the 13 shots. So someone needs to go. It's funny. Someone needs to go check on Slam Sedan. But yeah, we'll see about the Heritage Edition there. I was gonna say something else about it, but I lost my train of thought. But yeah. I think with the Heritage Edition it's kind of a smart play because I saw or heard something recently that like the only like the or not the only but the largest chunk of people buying new cars right now are empty nesters like over the age of 60. So Heritage Edition, you're appealing to people that are reminiscing about 240Zs and 280Zs and stuff like that. That's what that Heritage Edition is going after. I think they're hoping they can pull those people out to get those. So we'll see if that works or not. But all right, yeah, we still haven't heard from Slam Sedan, so hope he's all right. But let me see. B Mitchell says I finally saw 6 Nissan Z's the other day on the freeway on the back of a car hauler. Headed to a dealer that's going to lock them away at markups and play hardball with everyone who's remotely interested in it. I'm sure. Good looking out there. I'm glad that at least they're still shipping them, but that's funny. They're on the car hauler. Cam says, yeah, he's a goner. Oh man. Yeah, we gotta, I don't know. Slam Sedan, you gotta respond, buddy. Hopefully he's on here. And Chad says, what's the best city car? Toast the Slam Sedan. Yeah, I gotta get some whiskey out here, and we gotta have the 21 gun salute for him, man. This is, I don't know. So as far as the city car question, best city car. I don't know. I'd probably say, honestly, something small and easy to maneuver. Like a GTI, something like that. If you're looking gas, you're talking EVs, which I think are great in the city setting. I'd say something that's got good space but still small. Like Ioniq 6, I was so impressed with how much space you get in that thing for how small it is still. And like Model 3s, it's an anonymous car. No one pays attention to you anymore in a Model 3. You kind of it's a nice small car, getting lots of space. Things like that I think are pretty good city cars. I think Toyota IQ is the ultimate like really small city car that's like a reliable smart car essentially. I think it was Toyota the last couple of years. It was a Scion IQ and then went to Toyota. But I've never driven one, but that'd be a fun little car to review someday. But let me see. Trent Cargo says 07 to Slam Sedan. And let me see. Trent Cargo says we don't have any AC in the back of the branch, just some fans. The only access to AC we have are in the rentals themselves and the building office when we return the keys. Man, you would think Arizona, there'd be like some law that like every employer like needs to like have AC. At least in the summer or something. That's crazy. This is again like I feel like there needs to be more regulation for this corporate greed. Like buy air conditioning for your employees. Like, it's insane the kind of crap we put human beings through in the year 2024. Like, anyway, I won't go on another tangent, but Vishal says, I think early 2021 was the last normal time to buy a car. We were able to get $4,000 off MSRP on our 2021 gas Highlander XLE and got a 1.99 APR through Toyota financing. Nice. Yeah, that's a solid deal. And I agree. That was like really the peak there before everything went crazy with demand and with supply and pricing and interest rates and everything. Yeah, we'll see if how long it takes for interest rates to get back to normal and stuff. But It sounds like at least I've been seeing some companies advertising 0%, but it's like 0% APR for like 36 months or 48 months. And it's like, I mean, I respect you if you do that short of a term these days, but like who is financing cars that's short anymore? I feel like no one does like short terms like that, unfortunately. And so it's like it's almost like a fake ad. It's like, yeah, 0% if you want to have like a $1,500 a month, 36-month loan on a Corolla or something. It's like, is anyone actually taking that deal? I don't know. Cam Jeff says he's gonna wake up at 11 tomorrow and ask what did I miss, then us exposing him. Yeah, hope he's all right. And TC fan says, what's your view on the Mustang GTD? 325 grand seems like a tough sell. Lots of other tempting competitors at that price. I agree. Even as much as I like Mustangs, even if I won the Powerball or something and I had millions upon millions to burn just for kicks, I wouldn't buy a Mustang GTD. I mean, it sounds like it's gonna be impressive. And I think that'll be like probably the best competitor to this new Lexus that's coming because again, they're all GT3 cars. But yeah, 325, especially like we saw the interior, last week, and it's like it's nothing special. It's like the same thing outside of the little window that shows you the new suspension in the back. But other than that, it's like absolutely a tough sell. It's gonna go to the people that again are not buying, for any kind of like, oh, this is a good car from a value or a driving standpoint. It's going to be the collectors, the people that are on Ford's short list already anyway, and people that just, are buying them as art pieces to collect and then flip at some point down the road as investments. I know Ford has a selective process where they try and select people that are actually going to track them. And there's probably going to be a few of those people, but even those people know, you put some track miles on it and then you can still flip it and, sell it for a bunch of money. So it is what it is. But yeah, I'm not impressed by GTD from on the surface standpoint. I'm sure it'll be a mind blowing car to drive, but yeah, 325, I could go on all day about all the cars I'd rather have for 325 grand than a Mustang GTD. Not an appealing thing for me. And Austin says, hey Matt, do you see Jaguar surviving after their super luxury EV push going forward? They're a company, since we've been talking about companies, I think Jaguar has a worse prospect than Lucid, VinFast, or Polestar. I think that Jaguar is in worse positioning than even any of those are, because Jaguar has the baggage of the heritage, which can certainly be a benefit, but especially if you're doing this new futuristic EV thing, like, are you going to want something with an old Jaguar, thing from an old Jaguar dealership, selling it and stuff? Like, I don't know. And then it just sounds like, everything's going to be six figures. And, again, what do we have for six figures that's really impressive? You have the Lucids already, the Sapphire and all these things. You have Tesla Model S Plaids. You have all these other things. And sure, there'll be a few people that are tired of the current offerings and go for a Jag. It's not like they're going to sell zero of them, but like, especially with, not to be stereotypical, but the British have a hard time with electronics sometimes when it comes to cars and putting them together. So like, I'd say a British EV is probably, one of the tougher sells as far as EVs goes. Again, it's a stereotype. I'm sure that again, these are international vehicles that are built everywhere in the world, and again, it's an international team and everything. So it's not like the old days of hammering stuff together on a dirt floor. But like, still, it's I don't know. I feel like Jaguar doesn't have a great future, and they're also like, it's weird. They're overly ambitious with this transition where they quit building XE, XF, and F Type this past week or last month. And they're like, oh yeah, we're going to build so much supply. The dealers will be good for the next year. And then next year we'll have these new things. And it's like, everyone's been one, delaying stuff just because of timing stuff. And two, people are delaying stuff because they can't get it out fast enough. There's bugs. So I'm worried that, okay, even if they do deliver and by some crazy chance they actually get this new Jag EV out by next year sometime, so the dealers have something to sell and it's not just crickets at the Jaguar dealers in 2025. Even if they do meet that deadline, it's probably going to be rushed. And a rushed Jaguar from a development standpoint, I mean, we've seen this with Fisker. I could kind of see Jaguar going the same way as Fisker potentially, where they rush something, it's not fully baked. You have a bunch of horror stories about people that have jumped in on it. I mean, the good news is, you have the backing of Tata Motors there to help them out, and Land Rover and them, having more cachet there to kind of buoy Jaguar a little bit. But I think that even with Tata, it sounded like, from what I read on a report sometime in the past 6 months or so, it sounds like even the corporate overlords for Jaguar are kind of over Jag. It sounds like almost they're like, it just seems like even they're a little bit skeptical about, like, is this worth investing in and continuing to invest in? So if we're taking bets about companies that might not be around in 5 years, I'd say Jag's pretty high on my list of ones. Sadly, I mean, I love them. I mean, I still desperately want an F-Type someday, but like, and I mean, everything else they've done has been amazing, and most of their history, honestly, outside of their reliability thing. But yeah, I don't know. I think they're going to have a hard time, and hopefully it works out for them. Again, there's stuff behind the scenes I don't know about, so I'm hoping they got a great plan and they got fantastic stuff, and I will be proven wrong next year, but I'm not optimistic about their future, honestly. Vishal says, I did see Volkswagen did 0% APR financing on Tiguan's for a while. Not sure if they still are. I think Volkswagen was one of the ones offering that as well, but I think it was, again, 48 months or something silly. But he says, oh, they did 60 months. Okay, well, that's getting more appealing. That's cool. Cam Jam says, here's a top dad joke because I'm too tired to think of a good question. As I get older, I remember all of the people I lost along the way. Maybe a career as a tour guide wasn't the right choice. Good one. That's funny. My dad will probably appreciate that. He's a fan of dad jokes as well. He actually wrote an entire dad joke book called The Art of Fine Punmanship. It's on Amazon. If anyone would like to buy my dad's joke book, I'll give him a free plug there. But anyway, they are boomer dad jokes though, so be prepared for that kind of component. But still funny if you appreciate that. But anyway, let me see. Jewel says Hyundai is doing so well in sales because of the 0% APR. Can't afford it though because it's just 36 months. Yeah, same deal. That's funny. Cam Jam says here's one for Slam Sedan. Went to the bar tonight. Good times. Only a 15-minute walk, but the walk home took 45 minutes. The difference was staggering. But good one. Mitchell says I sold the white 68 F250 this weekend at Back to the 50s that you member profiled a few months ago. Didn't get my asking price, but we both did okay. Going to a good home. Oh, congrats. Hopefully it was okay. I didn't realize you were interested in selling any of your vehicles there, but I'm glad that hopefully it went to a good home, and hopefully they enjoy it. So, and congrats on the sale. Hopefully it ended up working out okay though. And Jules says, I won't be surprised if iPay sales are mostly to Waymo. Probably. That's another one I saw that their values have just plummeted. You can get an iPace that was, again, once a $60,000 to $70,000 vehicle in theory. I mean, they were discounted from the get-go, but they're like in the mid-20s now too. And they've had some problems though. That's another one. I don't know if I'd recommend that. I think I'd certainly rather, as much as I don't love Tesla, I'd rather have a Tesla. I think they're probably more solid than the iPace. And Austin says, who wants to see a Top Gear USA reboot with Matt, Doug, and Hoovy? Thanks for another fun live stream, Matt. Hope everyone has a good week. I appreciate that, Austin. Yeah, you're right. We're almost at the 2-hour mark here. That would be an interesting show, as many of you know, with my, again, thoughts on Doug and Hoovy. But I would love to see a Top Gear reboot in the US here actually do well for a change. They just need to bring in actual car people. I think all these shows are so hung up on, again, the older leadership saying, oh, we need to have a celebrity or else no one's going to watch it. And then they, put these celebrities, give them these TV deals. There was like a Robert Downey Jr. one about, like, I think electric vehicles and stuff. And then there was, like a Kevin Hart car show. And I mean, these are people that are excited about cars and stuff, but it's just like, I feel like when I've watched those shows in the past, so they make comments that, a car person will be like, as far as like not knowing, quite as much as a lot of car enthusiasts do on some of these things. And so there's just those types of things. I think if Top Gear USA wanted to just, bring in real car people that actually live and breathe this stuff and aren't just doing it on the side as a fun hobby. I think it could be a good show for sure. Because I mean, the challenges and all those types of high budget things are certainly really fun to see, and it'd be great to see more of that. But Trent Cargill says, I do intend to send Matt a picture of both my cars. I was sick earlier this week, so I couldn't do it then. All good, but yeah, hopefully you can send a picture over. I can feature it for a member car of the week soon. And B. Mitchell said, does that mean Scotty K will be the Stig, more like anti-Stig? Yeah, yeah. And it'll be easy to make that, since he makes the joke himself about like rip Scotty. He can just crash, and they can always make the joke about, oh yeah, he would die, like Austin said. Yeah, he would die every week. It'd be great for the show. So yeah, that would fit in exactly right. That's on point. And I see Renato's here as well. Thanks so much for stopping by, Renato. Hope you're doing well. He's a super kind, friendly person who way back, and I think it was at 2014 or something, went to LA, and he introduced me to a bunch of the BRZ and 86 owners in the area back in those early days, and showed me around LA, and it was a great time hanging out with Renato. So hope you're doing well, man, and thanks for stopping by and for all your support all these years too. And let me see. Austin says, I'll send a picture of my 500 Abarth soon too, once I detail it. Sounds good. Thanks, Austin. I appreciate it. And Vic says Scotty died 69 420 times. Nice. Yep. Probably. And speaking of that, I sincerely hope that Slam Sedan is doing okay, because he has not checked it after his commitment to do 13 shots. So hopefully he didn't actually take himself up on that challenge, but hopefully we will see him next week. Hopefully he just got busy with something else. But anyway, it's at the 2-hour mark here, so I will sign off. But thank you all so much for joining in here. And Cam Jim says, I think Matt should start a parody channel of all the car YouTubers that he doesn't like. I don't want to rock the boat and start drama, so I'm going to continue to bite my tongue and be nice. But yeah, Bewitch says, off to haul hay in North Dakota next week. See ya. Have fun. Sounds cool. Yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great week. Stay cool if you guys still have heat in your area. Thankfully, it's cooling off here this week. Hopefully, you guys get a little bit of a break from the heat as well. But yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. Have a great week, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay tuned for, again, a surprise car review tomorrow, and I'll be letting the members know about that here tomorrow morning. But thanks so much once again, and see you guys in the next one. Take care.